Well, good afternoon, Scott Baker.
Mikey Ames, how are you today? It's January 25th, time for another edition of Lead Better. The field note title today that we're talking about is Instilling Collective Pride. Leaders need to do that with their teams, I suppose, and we all want to be prideful of things that we're a part of. And, I don't know how much I buy it, but when they talk about the IKEA effect, right? When you
Yes,
build your own furniture, then
right.
you like it more. Do you think
There's
that's true?
there's a collective pride that comes in with you and your desk that you built.
Right.
Yeah, I actually do buy that. I think probably my proclivity to Lego make it a little bit more um, easy for me to claim that I've got a lot of pride in the things that I make. Now, when I was a kid, you would build and destroy and build and destroy and build and destroy. But here
Yeah.
in my adult years, I have the tendency to take on projects, and I'm not just talking about like the big Millennium Falcon or anything like that, but take on projects that tell myself as I'm building them, this is cool, this is unique. I recently did like a Starry Night
Right.
mosaic, and
Yeah.
it is three or
In
four
Lego.
times the size, all in Lego, and I hung it up on the wall, and the whole ethic around it is like I can break this down anytime I want and build something else. I don't want to break it down. Like there is a
Yeah.
collective pride between me and those bits of plastic that I feel like need to stay on the wall
Yeah.
for a lot longer.
Well, we don't do a lot of like jigsaw puzzles around the house, but we did one a couple of years ago, and then my wife got this thing that you can put a frame around it,
Right.
and then it's like we didn't hang it up, but it's sitting in a corner someplace because you're like, oh, I worked really hard on that.
Right. Right.
Probably
No, I think
we should probably stare at it a little longer.
we're getting at the idea of like what leaders have a tendency to do, and is that they will turn things into symbolic gestures with a deeper meaning to them, right? And so saying that we want to instill collective pride is basically saying that's kind of the thing that we do. We observe the things that happen around the office, we observe the things that happen in the organization, and we turn them into symbolic things that are bigger
Oh yeah.
than the individual who accomplished them.
Well, and there's a couple of key words here, right? Instilling, like how does a leader go about, hammering this in or cultivating it or fostering it or letting it flourish? Collective, it's not just like me, right? It's we. And then the pride part is kind of like, well, I guess we've done something good here, right? So you've got to kind of think about those. I think the fun part of this field note, because think about this, and for those of you who've joined us on past, and haven't you watched all of them, Lead Better discussions, the idea of identity has been popular here in the last couple of weeks in terms of an undercurrent. I don't even know if that was intentional, but it just sort of has kind of popped into a few of the field notes. So the idea that you might have a team identity, that there might be sort of this feeling that we have together. But the field note is specifically hitting this point that part of feeling the collective pride is feeling that you have a valuable role in that team, in that organization. And that's kind of the interesting, it's not a balance. It's not just a you versus everybody on the team, but what is the leader doing to make sure or foster that not only is the leader giving that kind of feedback, but everybody on the team is seeing what we're doing together, but also highlighting what each person is doing. And I think this is where the real heart of the field note is, which is when you can actually connect the contributions of each person and help elevate just by the spotlight, adding the right language, adding the right sort of emphasis or reward that says, she did this and that fits our overall mission this way. You did this, that fits our overall mission this way. So that we not only feel like we're doing something good in the world, we are doing something good in the world, and it kind of feels cohesive. And then people are like, I found the right place to be.
Right, right. And having that specific role becomes important. So oftentimes people really want their job description to be lined out in a very specific way. And I think we've noticed that a lot of the best leaders have a tendency to not be hyper specific about a written job description. In a lot of ways, because they want the role of a highly effective team to be somewhat dynamic. But there's a trade-off when you allow that team role to be dynamic, is that my attachment to the team now needs to be something that is found, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
so if you're going to allow it to be dynamic, but you're not going to really allow me to have the freedom to kind of find and create my own niche and my own role, then there's a problem in the overall philosophy of the way that you're trying to implement it.
Yeah.
But if I do have it, right? If I do have both the idea of there is some flexibility in this place for me to really attach myself and like not only identify with the collective identity, but what my role is connected to it, that's outside of my task identity, outside of like my job description. So I don't know what it is. Do you think that's a relationship identity that says we're more than just colleagues? Like I want to stay away from the family part, but there is something that says, how else do I connect if it's not task identity?
Well, let me try this, because I think you and I have talked about this a good bit. I've certainly thought about it a lot, because we want to balance this idea that people get into this sort of like we're all a family and we're out to change the world, and they always say, like in the mission statement from a startup, if you're like, we need to change the world, okay, that's probably a little too grandiose. Now back it off about 10%, and you could say, if we did this, would that contribute to the further flourishing of the planet? Well, probably, possibly. That might seem to be a noble thing to do. Okay, but let's work it backwards from there. Now, I think I mentioned a long time ago that I had read a book decades ago by Michael J. Fox's father-in-law, who's a financial advisor. And one of the themes that he kind of built out was, just go do your job. It's not your life. Yeah. It's not your whole life. Like, just do your job, go home, do a good job at your job, and you don't have to build your identity around the thing that you do as you're living.
Yes.
Some people will, some people won't. But here's the thing that I do believe. I think that whether you're a person who wants to make sure that their job and the thing they're devoting themselves is this noble thing and that it's going to nearly change the world and you feel connected to this, or if you find it's just sort of somewhat useful, that all of those perspectives can be okay, and a leader can foster and work with all of that, because the key to all of this is, does it make sense? Is it useful? Where you see things fall apart is where people feel like, I'm just punching the clock. Like, I'm not even like, I don't even know if anything I'm doing makes sense. We sometimes make fun of this in terms of government jobs. I used to work in government jobs. That's unfair to a lot of people in government. So, no need to comment or write in and complain. So, but you see what I'm saying, which is, this goes back like in the usefulness literature, for a long way. And you see, common examples. I don't even know if it's an apocryphal or folklore example from the time of the Holocaust, but I remember reading about the idea that they would sometimes have the inmates at the concentration camp do work that had no point. Like, today we're going to move these rocks all the way over here, and then the next day we're going to move these rocks back over here. Now, you can be in horrible conditions. You can be worked to literally your own death. But if there is some sort of logical purpose to the thing that you're doing, there is something inside of us that actually attaches to that. Right. But when you actually know that there is nothing to the point of what you're doing, your mind breaks down. Like, It would already be hard to pull yourself together. You'd have to kind of come up with another framework around why you're doing that thing, larger than what they're giving you, which is what many people in concentration camps did, right? So having a purpose in work is sort of fundamental to actually being able to sort of function. And I actually do think that this is going to become one of the major challenges for leaders over right now, the next couple of years, the next couple of weeks, right? As we look at AI applications and all of the things where people are like, is what I'm doing, does this matter? Why are they having me do it this way? Why is this machine process going to actually take over so much of what am I doing? Will there a way for me to be able to do something useful? And I think that finding ways to say, look, there is still so much to do in the world that needs to be set right, there will be plenty for us to do. Let's think about the best way to do that together. What more noble thing can a leader have in their sort of daily role than to kind of foster the identity of your usefulness and our mission in the world, connect those and bring a sense of identity. Again, it doesn't have to be the all-encompassing identity of your life, but it should have a very functional and real role for you.
So that's where leaders overstep then, because once you hear this tactic, the way that you lined it out, it feels like, okay, I want to make it as sticky as possible. I want the metaphor to be as like moving as possible. And so people default to the nth degree of that. And then they start talking about work as family.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and by the way, I'm not, when you said overstep, in probably some organizations, some leaders, some kind of teams, there could be a feeling of that. Right? Where you have something that is much larger than just like, we're going to go and have a really good day at the restaurant today, right? We're going to deliver this number of meals. Our lunch service is going to look like this. Our dinner service is going to look like this. And we're not there saying like, we're going to, I think after today, we should probably just stop because we will have reached the peak execution of restaurant time. It doesn't have to be that.
The point of that is, you brought up restaurants, for instance, like the highest performing teams on restaurants have a dedication to hospitality in a way that is like unmistakable. So if I knew that my GM, for whatever reason, is just about the bottom line, it's going to show up in the way that I'm supported and by and large, the way that I can now serve the customer. So the lack of hospitality that my GM has in mind to where so this question that Patrick Lencioni, what's the exact question? The one about what's your unique place in the world? How is it that he states that exact question? Like your business
in the organization, I think he talks about it in terms of the step past, like, why do you exist?
Yes.
Right. Is actually, how do you behave? Like, what are the things that you do that most of your competitors do not do? Like, what are characteristics of 2 or 3 capacities of things that you do? Like, we could apply that to ourselves. There are lots of leadership organizations out there. There's lots of people that say if we wanted to make leaders better in the world would get better. Great. And then you could say, well, is it just a dime a dozen? You go over here and you get that, go over here and you get that. It's all kind of the same. Well, there's nothing exciting about that. You really do have to believe we have something unique to add. And then you can say, well, what is that? You should be able to describe, well, we do it this way. We believe this, this, and this. And we're going to try to, when I was doing news organizations, we were going to be faster than our competition. We were going to be more skeptical than our competition. We were going to execute with a higher degree of virtuosity. These were things that were fundamental to saying, no, this is what it means to be us. When you can bring that to the level of your team and people say, this is what it's like, then even if they move on to another job or 10 jobs from now, they're going to go, remember when I was part of that team? Right.
Okay, so if you've got 50% of an organization saying the opposite of what we're saying, the way prideful teams declare things. So if half the team is saying, this isn't who we are, not from like from a point of indictment, like, I don't understand how we got where we are, but this is not who we are, then that's a pretty big red flag of a leadership failure. And there's been things that have come up in the news. I don't want to get political. I do want to talk about this in a way that doesn't incite things. But if you've got half the country saying that, right? Like, this is not who we are. Like, I can't believe what's going on. And then the other half of the organization is saying they're looking at it, and it just everything becomes a Rorschach test as to whether or not you're looking at it from one way or the other. Is that a profound leadership failure?
In some ways you want to bring clarity to all of that, and I do think that that's a part of the field note where it's saying it's not only this is who we are, but this is who we are never going to be. Like, if you say that about the people on your team and say we stand for this, so we don't want to, and that could be just strategic. Like, we do this kind of thing. If we start to branch out and do 20 other things, and we're going to water it all down. So that's just one part of that. But one of the things I like, and you mentioned Lencioni, and I think that when he's talking about pointing to what are the distinctives about the culture that creates the identity, when you think if there's 100 people in your organization, and if you said, who are the 5 essential people? Like, who are the superstars? Who are the people you'd be like, that? What are they like?
Yes.
Like, even you might say, clearly I'm one of those people. Like to yourself, you would say that. Get yourself out of it. Look at the other people. Say, what are those people like? Like, what are the characters? Because you're going to see the people that come in the organization and drift away, and you'll be like, they're not like them, right? Yes. You can just kind of tell. And this actually helps out.
From our point of view, is how do they behave, not just.
Yes, right. Yeah. Well, that's what I mean when I say like. It's like, what are they doing? What's the things that they do in the world, and are you one of those people? Because this not only helps identify the culture of the team, it helps you attract the right people.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This conversation could have been a lot stickier, but I think we should end it here. Anyway.
I liked it. Like we started with IKEA furniture and we got into a lot of good stuff.
No, it's fantastic. I just, the step beyond collective pride is the idea of like, if it goes a little too far, it seems like propaganda, right? And so once it's propaganda, what does it actually mean to the organization and where it was dealing with things in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of like practical real world examples to bring up when you use the word like pride and propaganda that are like very current to us. But it's worth thinking about. Right now, I think we choose to step away specifically from it because we want leaders in this day and age to be great leaders in every area of their life, right? If we get too distracted with, I don't know, at what point do you get too distracted with the news and you really want to say something about it, right? It's just a tough thing. But again, that's why leadership.
Well, one of the things I would say, just as a general principle, beyond politics, beyond whatever might be happening in your organization, is we sometimes talk about embodied leadership that you can get sort of mired down in confrontation or discussion around the thing, and it's better to say, well, what's the value?
Right.
Now, some people will say, well, on this thing, well, shouldn't we value people this way or that way? You say, okay, well, let's keep raising it to the next and highest level because you have to have a presupposition to your worldview. And so I think what I see a lot is people start reacting emotionally to things that are in their feeds and whatever else. And they're trying to be, on whatever side of the perspective, they're probably trying to be fairly attentive. Yeah. But very few people say,
everyone thinks that they are the.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But a leader can help to say, well, if this is what we're doing as an organization, you can say, or as a country, or as a civilization, like take it to whatever level you want. One of the best things you can always do is just say, well, let's look at the logical pathway. Let's take this concept. And if you say, well, this thing happened, but we think that this is the way that these things should in general happen. And we think that this is the way that this category should happen. And we think this is the way that our country should run or Western civilization. And you say, well, then what does it look like? Because your presuppositions and somebody else's might be somewhat different. But they're usually, once you move it up the level, the higher level, you can say, well, then now we kind of see, because if you're saying this should be this way, but not that way. Well, that actually might conflict with your own presupposition of what the larger value is. So you have to build in that consistency. And I actually think that when you do that you actually do build that identity. And that's one of the challenges for lots of civilizations right now, because there used to be a degree of connection around central unifying ideas or principles that said, well, this is who we are. Right. Well, now it's very hard to find that in many places, countries, would take your pick. And so the challenge of finding a way to re-articulate that is going to be, and I would say because of the challenge, and we're going a little over time here because you got me, but of the idea of what human identity is in the digital age. Yeah. This is the time, I would say, for leaders to say, you've got to step up. And that means not only being able to look or deal or be aware of the issues of the moment, you have to be able to see the meta issues of the moment. Right. Now, one thing, as somebody who was a television news anchor for 20 years and in news organizations for 30 years, but I stopped watching television news in 2016. Right. So I read a lot of Substack. I have followed very smart people on X. I get lots of physical newspapers. When you aren't trying to immerse yourself in the emotional sway of the network swarm, right, then one, you kind of focus yourself on saying, well, what's the value in what I'm thinking about this particular issue anyway? It's good to have an issue. I don't think we should have a perspective. But I actually have to say, well, what's the best way for me to make a difference in the world for myself? Very often, most of the time lately, because I used to work in politics 40 years ago, is I should probably work a little harder on myself. Like if I actually help myself and my team and those people, I can affect hundreds of people in a better way. That's actually a better way for me to make the world better than to pontificate about this issue or that issue or whatever, right? Now, I do want to actually have a perspective on the world that fits into a larger worldview, right? But I do think that we can kind of take our step to say, what are the best challenges for us to kind of tackle for ourselves, for our teams, to make things that we can control better? And I do suggest kind of dial down as much of the emotional network swarm as you can, and you'll probably have a greater and wiser perspective. And when other people are debating, just ask questions. And most of the time, what I find is that helps clarify their thinking, helps clarify your thinking. You don't get into a lot of debates, and actually people go, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Well, what about that? And what about this? And what do you think happens then? And most of the time they go, oh yeah. And they back way off of their original statement.
Right. And you're not necessarily doing that as a method of trying to be a peacemaker.
No, you actually end up understanding. You understand their perspective a little better. Usually you can bring up any issue in a question that you could in a statement. And so, is this helpful?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So, totally side point to the
I think it was right in the middle of it though.
Okay.
When you think about it, because you like this, the notion of like, okay, there's a collective pride thing that I want to be able to, and it doesn't stop it. Like my family, I want my family to have some collective pride around it. I know how to do that. But as my family phrase, because there's a larger thing they're identifying with, right? And as a result, our collective pride is now being challenged by the 2 or 3 levels thing higher than what we're talking about as a family.
Yeah.
And it's like, it challenges it. So I have to address like up the ladder, and this is why organizations feel like they need to comment on politics. Is because it's like,
well, listen, I was grateful that you kind of just said things generally, not specifically, because I knew what you were talking about. You were saying, should the Steelers have hired Mike McCarthy as their head coach?
Exactly.
And here where I am in Pittsburgh,
why
it is such an enormously, at some point you just have to lay it out there. And in fact, if you want to go into very emotional and divisive X posts right now, I'm seeing a lot of that.
Yeah. No, thank you. No,
I
love the higher level of this conversation. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mikey.
Bye now.